So we are live over on YouTube right now, and we're just waiting for Skip Williams to join up over on Discord, which you guys can see right there. It's just my smiling face today. Had a lot of fun last night with Jim Ward, and earlier in the day with Al Hammock. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun today with Skip. do, 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 do. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're all well. I'm doing just fine and dandy. Hello, Katie, Chris, Bo. Good to see you guys. We are just waiting on Skip Williams to join this call. And I apologize in advance for Discord's weirdness, because it does this thing where if there's nobody on the end of the call, it stops you from using the call as a broadcast method. It's like, hey, bandwidth doesn't come free. You've been on this call 5 minutes by yourself. And then cuts off the call. So if that happens, I'll start it up again. But again, we're just waiting on Skip to join. So yeah, last night, Jim Ward, lots of fun. And Al Hammock earlier in the day. Two great live streams yesterday. And I'm sure we're going to have a great one today. Just waiting on Skip. I'm sure he'll be with us momentarily. Skip Williams. Now, for those of you who might not know Skip, Skip is one of those guys, kind of like, Jim Ward and Al Hammock. You've probably gamed with his stuff. He was a friend of Gary's. In fact, he's from Lake Geneva, He was part of the playtest group for AD&D. He was friends with Ernie. Worked at TSR. Worked at the Dungeon Hobby Shop. It was around 87, he started writing Sage Advice. Edited Polyhedron. Went over to Wizards of the Coast, worked with Monty Cook and Jonathan Tweet on 3rd edition. Worked on the new Forgotten Realms as an editor. So yeah, this is a guy who's got his fingers in a lot of Dungeons and Dragons pies. We're going to talk to him today here. Just waiting for him to jump on. So I hope everyone got their questions in yesterday for Jim and for Al. And if you didn't remember, you can always message me. You can always put them in comment sections, and we can reach out to them again. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we've lost our call. I will try again. It appears you've been on this call by yourself for more than 5 minutes. The bandwidth patrol, yada, yada, yada. And we'll pop that back out. And hopefully we'll get a hold of Skip here shortly. I was sure this was the restaurant I made reservations for. But anyway, how are you guys today? Well, you fun folks out there in YouTube and Facebook land. But anyway, as I was saying, yeah, just let me know, and I will be more than happy to ask any questions of them. One cool thing, and I thought this was pretty spiffy, Jim will sign stuff if you send it to him. Reach out to him over on Facebook or on whichever social media, but reach out to Jim, and you can send him stuff and he will sign it and send it back to you. I would absolutely love to have my Deities and Demigods autographed by Jim Ward. I've got a few things autographed by him. I've got my copy of Supplement 1, Greyhawk, and my copy of Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, also autographed by him, but not my copy of Deities and Demigods. So I definitely want to get that done. Although, well, I said Greyhawk. Do I have his signature on Greyhawk? I don't remember. I know I've got it in my Dungeon Master's Guide too, but... So yes, if you want a copy of one of those classic books signed, he will do that for you. Kitty says, okay, I have a sick little kitty I'll have to take to the vet. I hope she'll... Oh. Well, that's no fun. I'm sure she'll be okay. I'm sure she'll be okay. Vet'll take care of her. That's a shame, Katie. Sorry about your kitty. Our feelings go out to you and Kitty Cat. My wife's cat, who likes hanging out in my office and insisting that this chair belongs to her. Seriously, she gets mad. She gets highly irritated when I move her from this chair to sit down and do my live streams during the day. But she meowed in sympathy. So we have some strange cats. My youngest daughter's cat is a spoiled little thing. Very mischievous. My older daughter's cat is just this tough little short-haired brick of a thing. But she comes to me at night and sings to me. She comes to me and she makes these little noot, 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 noot sounds as she hangs around me. Hums sometimes too. It's not purring. It's humming and making this sort of noot, noot, noot sound. It's very adorable. And then my wife's cat, like I said, she just thinks everything in my office belongs to her. Like literally 10 seconds before I went live on Monday when I was doing the deep dive on Tomb of Horrors, she hopped up on the table, not a problem. She can't, if she came over and stood on the monitor and put her front paws on it, she would be slightly visible to the camera. But no, she hopped up on the table and then laid down on the arrangement of Tomb of Horrors modules that I had on the table. Daddy was not happy. I'm a dog person, so I have a black lab, Zeus, who's a wonderful boy. I love him to just love that dog. He's a great dog. Let's see. Where is the great and mighty Skip Williams? Just waiting on you to jump on, Skip, if you're out there. Alright, once again, Discord has kicked me off, so once again, I'm just going to initiate another call. Ha ha ha, Discord. I'll show you. Pop that out. There I am right back. So hopefully Skip will will get in on this call. Just waiting on him to join us. Yeah, pets are awesome. Bo says, our cat's name is Mischief. I think all cats' name is Mischief. And hello to you over on Facebook, of course. I see that I have one viewer. Hello, viewer. I'm not sure who that is, but welcome just the same. So next week, we've got a couple of guests land up. Me not understand English? That impossible. Next week, I have a couple of guests lined up. We will have a game developer. It's me, Mario. Hello, Kevin Reynolds. Over on Facebook. But next week, game designer Jeff Talanian will be here. Jeff is responsible for the most excellent old school, and by old school, I mean it merges up with AD&D. I don't mean old school like. I've kind of done a rant about the OSR. I may go back and kick that beat that dead horse a little bit more, but it's not an OSR product. It actually bolts up quite nicely to first edition AD&D. It's called Astounding Swords and Sorcerers, Astounding Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea, and it's kind of an operational level of kingdom management to use with OSR games, which I mean, when I say OSR, I'm talking about AD&D. So she eats well and stuff, but gooby eyes and wheezy soft of that. Oh yeah, that she's probably just got a cold, Katie. Just a little. They'll get her a little kitty antibiotic, and she'll fix her like that. But anyway, yes. So that's the scoop on next week. Oh no, no, it's not. That's not all the scoop on next week. Also next week we will have Alan Grohe here. Now, if you are at all interested in first edition AD&D and the world of Greyhawk, and you want it from a fan's perspective, where somebody has gone through and connected all the dots, brought all the red yarn in to go from pushpin to pushpin for Greyhawk lore, that is my buddy Alan. And Alan also he's not just an AD&D fan and a Greyhawk fan. Alan has also had his hand in the creation of Delta Green for Call of Cthulhu. So we're going to talk to Alan about that. Next week wonders. Yes. Hello, Elton. Today wonders. I'm wondering where Skip is. Maybe he decided to skip this interview. It's where I put on my sunglasses and Pete Townsend's Yell from Won't Get Fooled Again would play if I did that. Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. Now just Hyperborea. I don't know. I don't know if it's now just Hyperborea, but ASSH. Ash. It's my my impression of Sean Connery, by the way. Ash. Get off your ash. Oh my goodness. Oh, we just lost Discord again. I'm going to try again. I'll keep trying. I'll keep trying to get a hold of Skip. So we'll see that. Yeah. So next week I got stuff going on. Um, yeah, Delta Green was righteous. Now, if you're not familiar with Delta Green, um, the interesting thing, like at first blush, you might look at Delta Green, you might be forgiven for thinking that the Chaosium guys, that John Tynes um, was all about just kind of taking the X Files template and laying it on top of Delta Green. Not true. Delta Green's development began like 4 years before the X Files premiered. John Tynes started formulating it. It just happened to come out right at like the ascendancy of the X Files popularity in the 90s. But it continues on today. Delta Green was a pre-year 2000 product. Um, and it was a sort of a year 2000, you know, is the world gonna end sort of paranoia, grays, UFOs, government conspiracies, all that stuff very nicely woven into a background of the cosmic horror that is presented in the Cthulhu mythos. So it all came together very nicely. So you have your traditional Call of Cthulhu horror, sanity loss, and that sort of thing. But there's Men in Black, black helicopters, Area 51. But there's still the great old ones pulling the strings in the background. Definitely check it out. Elton asks, usually, do you think music is necessary for good sessions? And if yes, any music or thematic is better. Generally speaking, I'll throw on, like, I'm notorious for playing Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. That's always a fun one for fights. Uh, the Conan the Barbarian soundtrack, of course, by Basil Poledouris, that was put out by Varis Sarabande in the 90s. It's like a 75-minute long soundtrack. Like, if you go out and you get the MCA version, just like, you're like, oh yeah, I found this in a used CD shop. It's like 35 minutes long, and it's missing so many different music cues. Yeah, you've got Anvil of Crom and the Kitchen, or not even the Kitchen, the Orgy. Otherwise, you don't get as many good tracks. So that's almost like a must-have. We're still waiting on Skip. I'm not seeing any messages from because I know we're gonna lose the call here in a minute. So I'm gonna try something. Let me try something. I'm gonna close this screen and then I'm gonna get back to your question, Elton. So hang on a second. Let me close that. Come over here. So oh. No, that's not it. Come over here. And let me see if that's grabbed. No. Let me add this. There we go. Okay. All right. So we can do this and I can hang out without being bothered until or assuming that Skip's going to come on. Let's see if that's working now. There we go. Okay. All right. So to go on, to answer your question, Elton, I will put that soundtrack on, but there's sometimes even the best film score soundtrack doesn't fit the mood, the tone that you're going for. So it doesn't work a lot of times. I don't have music. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it makes or breaks your session. I think it can set the tone quite a bit. If I'm doing horror and I'm trying to build dread in the players, I will play like ambient horror sounds. I don't mean a Halloween tape of screams and werewolves and bats squeaking and creaking doors. A lot of the ambient tracks from Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, Quake are good ones. Did I just get a message on Discord? All right. Well, I just got a message from Skip. He's up on Discord, so we're gonna go over there and we're gonna grab Skip. So let me get that going. So anyway, to round up my question, or my answer to your question, music is not a must, but it's nice to have. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen with you guys. I'm going to get the call going with Skip. You guys will have my audio. I'll keep talking. It's not like I'm going to drop off the internet completely. So give me just a minute. Skip says he's eating breakfast, so we're gonna go join Skip for breakfast. Let me see if this will work. Let me see if I start video call. If that will work. Pop this out. Hello, Skip.
Still got 3 minutes of morning left.
You still got 3 minutes of morning left. Okay.
Where I am, anyway.
Oh, my gosh. So, anyway, how the heck are you, other than eating breakfast?
Well, things happening in the household, so things are not exactly coming up roses right now.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
But so it goes.
So it goes. Well, in general, how are things? Let me ask you that.
Well, I'm not bored. I'm sorry, I thought we were on for 12:30, so.
I think there may have been some miscommunication. I meant 12:30 my time.
Oh.
And you said, so 11 o'clock my time, and I thought we were on the same sheet of music. I apologize for that.
All right, well, that's me, but I was having trouble with this anyway, so.
Okay. So Skip is joining us by phone, folks. So if anybody's got any questions for Skip while he finishes his breakfast, just put them in the chat there, and I'll just ferry those right along. From Elton Borges, Skip didn't slip. Greetings.
Well, I slipped a little bit.
One might say you slipped in.
Yes.
So here's a question that came up in discussion, Skip, and it's kind of a light fare, so you don't have to don't have to think too hard about this one. But we were talking about music at the gaming table. Do you When you run a game, do you have some tunes on, or
Not usually, but sometimes.
anything in particular stick out of the old music library?
I'm a classical nut, so some of the biggies are fine. Ride of the Valkyries is good. Is good combat music.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll stick on some Beethoven from time to time too. I find that the Siege of Vienna works great for
Yep.
big epic sweeping battles and so on. Um, but as often as not, I'll find myself going for classic rock too. So, some
You're going to say, yeah, looking at your movie posters there, now that we've got some decent movies, there's all kinds of great soundtracks available too. That are would be pretty good for gaming.
oh yeah, oh yeah, and I mean, if you're running a 3-hour session, you can put on all three Lord of the Rings discs and you're set, right?
Well, the voiceovers might be a little bit of a distraction, but I'm sure the soundtracks are available, aren't they?
Well, yeah. I was talking about the film scores themselves.
Right.
Not
Oh,
not
yeah.
not with not the
Yeah.
actual films. Yeah, that would get distracting. Um. So here's a question from Elton. How did you get into tabletop?
How did I get into tabletop?
Yeah, just
I've told the story a
nice.
couple of times, but let me see if I can keep it a little bit fresh here. So, I grew up in Lake Geneva,
Mm-hmm.
and my earliest brush with tabletop gaming was um, in a store with one of my grandmothers, and she offered to buy me something, and I said, "Well, how about some toy soldiers?" And said, "Oh, you're too old for those." And I was like maybe 9 or something at the time. I don't remember how old I was, 7, 8, 9, or whatever it was. So
Mm-hmm.
that was my first brush with tabletop. It didn't go well, as it were. Um, Years later, I saw a photograph of some people playing with HO scale armor on the front page of the local newspaper, the Lake Geneva Regional News. And that was a picture from an early Gen Con that had happened the week before.
Nice.
So it's like I had missed that.
Now, was it
So
still?
then, say again?
I was just going to say, was it still early enough for the regional Gen Con to be in Gary's basement?
It was at the Horticultural Hall that
Oh,
year.
okay. Okay.
That must have been like a picture from like Gen Con 6, maybe.
Okay.
They had moved out of Gary's basement, and they had done one at George William College at the other side of the lake, and then I think this year they had moved to the Horticultural Hall. That year they'd moved to the Horticultural Hall in Lake Geneva. So fast forward into the school year, and one of my classmates was messing around with a World War II type battle map, I should say. And it had, border defenses and troop movements and all this other good stuff. And it turned out he was involved in a campaign. That other student, his name was Don Arndt, who later unwillingly lent his name to the Invulnerable Code of Arn.
Ah, very cool.
Fairly
You say unwillingly?
Yeah, Gary thought apparently he played a cleric, and he was always deathly afraid of taking damage. So when Gary created this artifact that would make you invulnerable to physical attacks, he naturally thought of Don. Well, Don was not consulted, I'm pretty sure. Nor was anybody else who was named, as far as I know. The Mighty Servant of Luco and all those other artifacts from Elder's Wizardry. A lot of those were named after people Gary knew. I'm pretty sure he didn't consult anybody. So then fast forward another school year, actually. I mean, I think I may have the timeline a little bit long. The next year, I started high school, and a classmate of mine had the D&D books with him. His name was Marcus Karowski.
Okay.
He never did anything really in gaming. Last time I saw him, he was playing the accordion professionally. But that was my first D&D game. And then shortly thereafter, it was Gen Con time again, and I attended. And ran around Gen Con and did a little work for TSR at the time, and played in a naval battle and was well and truly hooked. So there you have it.
Well, there you go. A brief history of Skip Williams, a joint in tabletop. Now, I know this from our previous conversations and interactions. You were also friends with TSR artist and all-around swell guy, Tracy Lesh. I have one of his paintings back here, actually.
Yeah, Tracy is a high school classmate. And early D&D illustrator. Yep.
Yep. Was he with TSR before you got involved with him, or?
Well, yeah, I don't think he ever worked for TSR. He just did work for TSR. I don't remember. I don't remember if he even did. I'm not sure he even had any illustrations in the first three books. I don't remember.
Not in OD&D. Blackmore, all of the illustrations in Boot Hill, and a couple of other things that escape me right now.
That sounds right. So that would have been the second supplement.
Right. Supplement to Blackmore. So, you actually did some stuff too with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, yeah?
Yeah, I became part of Gary's circle, and we talked games a lot. So. AD&D, it was very much what Gary had gathered from other people who were playing the game. So.
Okay. So when you say from other people playing the game, you mean from player feedback from the larger circle of gamers, or
conversations that, letters that people wrote and conversations at conventions and just what people were encountering when they were playing locally. Yeah.
Okay. That's one thing I've maintained for years, that if you have original Dungeons and Dragons, the supplements, a stack of early Dragon magazines, and the strategic review, that you basically got Advanced Dungeons and Dragons right there. It's just scattered across a couple of dozen very inconvenient and separated places, and that the AD&D hardbacks, kind of boils it down, and you've got everything in 3 nice volumes in front of you there. Well,
I suppose that's true in a sense. I don't recall there being a lot of the nuts and bolts ever published before the hardbacks came out.
Mm-hmm.
So things like the multiple attacks for fighters and the rearrangement of saving throw priorities and a number of other nuts and bolts things, I don't recall ever seeing published anywhere. But certainly, you could get the feel, you could get a sense of where the game was going from all of that. Mm-hmm. Absolutely so.
Yeah, I guess
the appearance of the illusionist and a little bit deeper examination about what was actually happening in the game world when a spell was being cast, because that was completely absent from the first books.
Right.
But discussed in pretty good detail in Gary's column from the Sorcerer's Scroll. And if you were, yeah, I think you'd probably also need to be paying attention to the dragon's letter section too, for that matter,
Mm-hmm.
to really to get a true full-on AD&D type experience. But
Okay. Okay.
so I think that's true in essence. I think that's true, if not strictly in fact.
Right. I to kind of to bolster what you're saying there. I mean, I think the only concrete new rules that were presented prior to the completion of the books, because it was Monster Manual in '77, and then didn't get the players till '78, and the Dungeon Master's Guide in late '78. There was an issue. It was issue 22 of the Dragon, had a preview of the Dungeon Master's Guide that was essentially the practical tables and charts for combat, melee, and psionic combat was in Dragon. But otherwise, yeah, you were definitely not getting a nuts and bolts presentation of AD&D until you had all three hardbacks in hand.
Yeah, I like to remind people. I hang around pretty much all the nostalgia groups. That's not true. I hang around a lot of the nostalgia groups.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I like to remind people of is all this stuff that solves problems that you can borrow from the earlier editions. You know, that's all stuff that came out of the community. So I remember I was involved at once in a conversation where, it's like, you really should do it this way. So he's like, no, that's a second edition rule, and this is a first edition board. It's like, okay, well, it was published in second edition, but it came from the community.
Mm-hmm.
The game is, I mean, the minute that the books got out there, and really even before they were published, because Arneson was out farming the game out, showing the game to college groups, even the summer before the game was even published. As soon as it got out of that first little circle of Gary and his family, plus Dave Arneson and a couple of his friends, you had the game evolving.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Kind of to that question from Elton Borges over on the YouTube comments. He says, what was the most fun or important changer edition that you yourself created, the one that you're most proud of? That's Elton's question.
Well, that would have to be something out of 3E. I mean, as a sage, I floated all kinds of things that wound up in the game eventually in one form or another, but I was always careful as the sage to point out that this was something that was temporary. This was a Band-Aid that you could slap on your campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So what did I create? That would probably have to be monster types. Because, back in the old days, there was one column monster. And you got a set of saves out of that, and you got a set of attack ratings out of that. And that never sat particularly well with me. It's like some monsters are going to be better at other things than other monsters are. Just like some characters are going to be better at other things than other characters are. That first implementation is actually not aged all that well. To have it split currently, the way I think the game has it split is you have an origin plus you have a role,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is probably a really nice evolution of the idea.
Yeah, well, that's definitely one thing, and I try to admonish friends who are DMing for the first time. If you're running any kind of humanoid, if you look in the Dungeon Master's Guide, of course, you can have spell casting goblins and orcs and whatnot. The witch doctor and tribal shaman or even blend them together to get even more spell casting ability. So I'm with you there on giving a nasty surprise to the unwary player with some goblin skulking in the back of a band of them and suddenly drops all the players' resistances with a dispel magic. That's always a lot of fun.
Well, always it's always good to hit them where it's least expected. That's
Yes.
I don't remember who said it. Hit them where they ain't. Somebody famous said that. I'm not sure who it was. Like MacArthur, maybe. I don't remember.
That sounds like it could have been a MacArthur, or maybe a W.E.B. Du Bois, or was his get there the firstest with the mostest?
Yeah, that was Union General. That whose name escapes me at the moment.
Okay, but yes, we're
Wow,
good.
there was a he was a kick butt lawyer is what the Blah was. So I'm not sure. I'm sure he has some good quotes, but Dubois was not a military man. So
Here's one. It's kind of a pointy one from Awig. Is the monk cursed? They always seem to be a problem class.
maybe I had a great deal of fun when we were playtesting 3E with a monk character, but they're deceptively hard to play. Because for one thing, that high movement rate encourages you to get out where you got nobody helping you, and then you get into trouble. And that's also the case sometimes with that falling ability. I cannot count the number of times I've had monks jump off cliffs or jump down mountainsides or whatever and use that falling ability. And it's like, okay, now you're at the bottom of the feature, which, oh gosh, this is the entrance to the dungeon. And here's an encounter that's meant for the entire party and you're there by yourself. They're reasonably tough, but they don't have necessarily a lot of armor class or a lot of hit points. So if you get yourself into trouble and you get yourself where you're not going to get any help anytime soon, that can end very badly.
I would love to get you and my buddy Ty Beard, designer of A Fistful of Toes and some other war games. He loves the AD&D monk. I mean, he's friends with Matt Finch, who helped design Osric, and he said Osric is a fine supplement or way to get into AD&D if you don't have access to the books. But that book has a criminal flaw in it. It doesn't have the monk. So I have to get you guys on the same chat and have the Church of the Monk.
Yeah, I mean, monks can be great. I mean, monks are great scouts, and if you team up with the party's rogue, you can kick some pretty serious butt. Scoot around as the monk and let the rogue skulk. And in either case, if one of you gets dry belts, the other one goes to work. So if the monk gets into trouble, the rogue shows up and does the old sneak attack. And if it goes the other way, the monk can show up and do a stunning attack. And if you're the monk and you've got somebody stunned and you got your pal the rogue right there, well, that bad guy's in real trouble. So as part of a team, monks really can be really seriously effective. Very valuable team members.
Oh yeah, and you hit on the you hit on the exact key phrase, I think, there, as part of a team. It's kind of like you don't want your tank destroyer out just roaming around by itself. Get some infantry and some other support for it, right?
That is really, really an apt comparison, especially if you think about tank destroyers and all the people who use them. I'm thinking strictly about the American tank destroyers now. There was a doctrine, right? The tank destroyer doctrine,
Mm-hmm.
which worked really well in North Africa for a couple of battles, and that was really unfortunate, right? Because most Allied commanders who had U.S. tank destroyers tried to use them as tanks, and they aren't tanks.
They are not. Treads, armor, and a big gun does not necessarily equal a tank. Um,
Yeah, especially in the American, where you had open top turrets.
yeah, the well, all of them basically. Yeah, it wasn't an M10, M36. Um, was that and the M18. That's a,
M18,
yeah,
yeah,
the M18, M10,
yeah, they
M36.
really are. They really are the monks because they're all fast,
Mm-hmm.
wickedly fast. They can, I mean, they're great as a reserve. That's how I like to use them in tabletop games, is as a reserve.
Yeah. Or even similarly, the not to wander too far afield into World War II and thereafter armor discussions, because I'm sure people are going to be going nose down in their keyboard if I go too far down the rabbit hole. But the design of the Leopard 1, the West Germans in the 1960s said, well, they've got these new anti-tank missiles. There's no point in weighting tanks down with heavy armor. So I mean, you could make the case that the Leo 1 is almost more of a tank destroyer than a tank compared to its contemporaries, the M60 and the T62. But again, that's a discussion for another time.
Indeed.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing to remember, about any version really of the D&D monk
mhm.
is that if you get into trouble, one round of badness is probably not going to take you out, but two or three or four almost certainly will.
Yeah, I mean,
So that's got to be your guiding principle, is to don't get yourself into anything you can't get yourself out of, and you've got all kinds of options for getting yourself out of trouble. You have to think of those all the time.
well, let's kind of follow that reasoning a little bit on the monk, because now I'm intrigued, and maybe you know the answer for this. But why was the monk not given his dexterity bonus to armor class, at least in AD&D?
Um, I think it was because they had the class based bonus, and they were just worried that it was too good.
Just didn't want to double stack.
I mean, yeah, because that the original monk, I'm pretty sure, is a Brian Bloom design, and
I
he based it off the Destroyer novels.
Yeah, I had heard I'd heard that it was Brian Bloom, but I'd also heard that it was based on Kung Fu, the TV show. So I mean,
Well,
I've heard both. I heard both Destroyer and Kung Fu, but I never knew which one was 100%.
I don't know that Brian was a great kung fu fan, but if things like the high movement rate and being able to fall or jump and the initial bonus if you used weapons, because remember the early monk, if you could use your so-called open hand attacks, or you could use weapons, and if there was a level based damage bonus if you were armed,
Mhm.
and those are all pretty clearly taken straight out of the Destroyer novels.
Right, right. And for our listeners who may not know, man, if you're looking for some good, like, just pulpy, I can knock this out while waiting to get the tires put on the car, uh, reading, you should check out the Destroyer novels. They're just good, dumb fun.
Yeah, that's correct. That's a great solution. But by the way, if you want to just dip your toe in, Remo Williams, that movie Remo Williams,
Oh, that's a fun one. Yeah, yeah. That's
yeah,
the
that's clearly that. I think they actually credit the Destroyer novels.
Yeah, yeah. I remember my dad and I actually saw Remo Williams at the neighborhood theater when it hit there. You know, it's like $1 for a matinee on Wednesday or something like that, and he greatly enjoyed it because he had read and enjoyed all the Destroyer novels, and just all the way home couldn't not regale me with the some of the funnier points out of the novels, like uh, in one, Remo like escapes the watchful eye of Chun and goes out and gets a hamburger, but it's been years since he's eaten greasy fast food and it nearly kills him. It's just like he has to come
Yeah.
crawling back to the headquarters there and spend a couple of days purging his system. But yeah, that's a lot of fun. Hello, Cam 1138. Oh, Paul is
Yeah, I was
admonishing
thinking
us.
actually of a scene. There's a scene where one of the masters is talking about any weapon is deadly in the hands of a master, and he takes a toy plastic airplane and kills somebody with it.
I can absolutely
I don't remember
picture
which
that.
book that's from now, but like it's a ninja type breaks into the office or something. Anyway, he picks up this toy airplane and embeds it in somebody's forehead. Just talk about off the wall fun.
Yeah, yeah,
But
good.
yeah, if you're not familiar with Remo, if you're not familiar with the Destroyers and you really want a totally brain not required immersion, you could do worse than the Remo Williams movie.
Yeah.
And the books, they probably are available. I don't know. These days, I'm pretty sure you could find the books used, if not new.
We Paul Stormberg over on Facebook is scolding us. He said, "What is this, Tractics and now Fight in the Skies?" I see you over there,
Well,
Paul.
you haven't gotten me started on Fighting the Skies, Paul. That's just a reference to the airplane, but I would be more than happy to get started on Fighting the Skies.
Um, so let's see. Any other questions? I think that was I think that's the most recent question we have. But I did want to I did want to ask you about when you were doing Sage Advice back in '87 for TSR. Uh, First of all, like what, published or not, I'll just let you make the judgment call. What was like the craziest, just what in the heck is this going on at this person's table question you ever got as the Sage Advice columnist, where you were just like, I can't, what, why would this ever come up at a gaming table moments that you got at Sage Advice?
Well, we used to collect those for the April issue every year,
Okay.
and those were all genuine reader submitted questions. None of those were made up.
Oh my gosh, you're
So if
you're
you
kidding
remember,
me. The April Fool's issue,
the April Fool's questions,
those were
they were
real.
all
Oh
real.
my gosh.
So, if I get polymorphed into a worm and somebody cuts me in half, do I have two characters? Or there was one from that actually got ported over to the Marvel about Aunt May killing Galactus, um, which Roger Moore just went completely crazy over. He put that over there, and he put a picture of the character up there, and Aunt May Fret or Menace was the title. That one may actually take the cake. That's not D&D, but it does take the cake because it's sort of the classic dumb question if you really think about it, because it was a Marvel question.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the question was written was like, if Aunt May has 100 karma, she can kill Galactus with one stab. How terrible. What a stupid game. And it's like, okay, first of all, No, Galactus has got boatloads of armor, and somebody's stabbing somebody with a kitchen. If Aunt May attacks Galactus with a kitchen knife, she's not going to get through the armor. It's not going to do any damage. Read the rules. And secondly, where in on God's Marvel Earth is Aunt May ever going to get 100 karma points?
It's 12:30.
What kind of game are you running?
That's great.
On the D&D side, I think it was somebody talking about somebody they found a bunch of smoke powder, and then later they found a throne carved out of emerald, and they blew up the emerald throne with the smoke powder, and they didn't know how to do the damage. And isn't that a terrible, horrible thing? And it's like, yeah, we're gonna. That was one of the few times I really went off on a reader. It's like, we've got a team of designers, and we're working up shrapnel rules for all the major gemstones now. That you pointed out this terrible hole in the rules.
Goodness.
Like, look, dummy, if you don't know how it works, don't put it in your game.
We have a question from Paul Stormberg. Ask Skip about Boric the fighter. Boric, your fighter character. Did you adventure in both Rob and Gary's games?
Boric, yes. No, actually, no. No, I don't think I ever ran Boric for Rob. Only for Gary. Boric was a character I was used through the giant modules, and he went through the magic mirror, and he did the Alice in Wonderland modules, magic mirror. What was the title of the first one? I can't remember the title of the first one. It was
Dungeon Land and Through the Magic Mirror.
That's it. Yeah.
Where you?
Yes, I don't think I ever ran Boric for Rob. I don't remember doing that for Rob.
Okay.
I had a Daffling Rogue, and I had another fighter. I don't even remember that. Very short-lived other fighter that I think I used when Rob was GMing, but
okay. Another question from Paul. He's just full of them. What was the fighter that fought against Jim Ward's wizard against the Dark Druids?
That would be this unnamed fighter I'm trying to remember, because that was a Rob adventure.
Okay.
Right. Well, it might have been, I don't know if it might have been a Boric clone that never even got named. I don't remember. I think that adventure did not end well. I think Jim wished it away at the end.
Ah.
I'm not sure exactly how that came out, but as I recall, we were doing really well for a while. It kind of fell apart fast, but it was just two characters, so
right.
Small D&D parties don't always do really well.
Yeah, you gotta, soloing some of those is, I think. I can't imagine, or not even solo, but just a duo going in. I mean, I've got our Monday night group is 11 strong plus an NPC, and they've got like 25 men at arms. Although they don't take them into the dungeon, they just watch the horses. And even then, sometimes I'm like, man, are they gonna make it out of here? Am I being too hard on them? Paul says, died retrieving the invulnerable coat of Arn. There it is, the invulnerable coat of Arn popping up again. Katie over on YouTube says, do you have an overall favorite moment at the table?
Yeah, well, most of them actually involve other players and sometimes other GMs. So, yeah, I mean, you've been playing as long as I have. They tend to. I mean, I witnessed a player once diving off a bridge that for some reason decided it was a good idea to dive off a bridge and try to land on top of a beholder, and you can imagine how well that worked out.
Yeah.
Although I think he did get the beholder because, as I recall, he was turned to stone. So the beholder had a statue fall on it.
Well, then it wasn't
Well,
in
took out the
vain, was it?
beholder. Yeah, I wasn't even jamming that one. That wasn't me. But that's the first one that came to mind.
That's that's
Last
great.
last year at Gary Con, um, one of the groups met a major NPC who was supposed to give them information, and instead of doing that, they managed to incapacitate the NPC and steal his vehicle, which I thought was a pretty cool move. I was that was one of those great meme generating moments. It's like, you know what? If it entertained the GM, what the hey?
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. just everybody jumping on that opportunity. The
Yeah.
whole group, the
It,
whole group just suddenly realized that they had a chance, and they all did it. That was that was pretty great. That was the most recent one.
and that was that one you were running or you were participating in?
I was running that one.
Okay.
That was one of my mini campaign sessions.
What system?
D&D 3.5.
Oh, okay. You mentioned vehicle, and I didn't know if it was a modern or what have you.
Yeah, there was that literally was a situation where I twigged the scenario on the fly because it was a storm giant riding a chariot that was being pulled by a bunch of griffins, and I'm not going to reveal exactly what was going on.
Of
But the
course.
reality was the party would not have been able to operate the chariot just because of the way I had it set up.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? This is so cool. I'm just going to go with it.
Sometimes you got to do with that. Sometimes you got to do that. Just as a DM, and that's one thing I admonish people to do if they're DMing is just employ the rule of cool. Sometimes you just got to go with it. Paul wants to know about. I look, Skip. This is Paul Stormberg's question. I didn't put him up to this. I swear. He says, "Ask the time you helped thieves load stolen TSR goods."
Oh, that was a lovely, lovely little. That. First of all, not actually true. That was the rumor at the time.
Okay.
So the short version of that story was Lake Geneva in the summer, full of drunken people from Chicago. And a couple of them figured out how to get into the building at Main and Broad. So they got in there and broke into the Dungeon Hobby Shop. They walked right by Gary's collection of elastilins, and mine too. Gary and I had our elastilins, so that ought to resonate with Paul right there. So Gary and I had our combined elastilin collections in the time. These guys walked right past those, broke into the cash register, which was empty. And then they stole a bunch of T-shirts and Frisbees. And they were loading up their Camaro, I think it was. And I was working upstairs on Gen Con at the time, came down and saw them carrying boxes out of the, engaged them in conversation. And they're chatting me up, and I suddenly realized these guys are robbing the building. And this was before cell phone. So I hoofed it to the police station, which was about 2 blocks away,
Mm-hmm.
and said they're robbing the TSR building, and they got in their Camaro and they're heading towards Chicago on the highway, and they were never caught.
So somewhere out there, maybe stuck in a box in an attic, somebody's got a TSR frisbee or possibly T-shirt of
Or they hawked them, or they they took them to Chicago and hawked them on the street,
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
They probably sold that stuff out of the trunk of their car.
yeah.
Yeah, as far as I know, they didn't take anything else.
Just walk past the expansive toy soldier collections and just took a bunch of merch.
Well, Paul's got to admit it. Paul's got to admit that's got to put a chill down his spine, that there were thieves who had access to.
He says over on Facebook, great story. The truth comes out.
But yeah, so at some point, the rumor mill at TSR got started, and the whole concept of me engaging these people in conversation that got morphed a little bit, as rumor mills will do.
So turned from Skip stumbled on these people and said a few words to you're over there heaving boxes into the back of the car for them. All right. Well, now we know the truth. Now the truth is told. I just, I got to admit that's pretty brassy though. Just driving up to a storefront, Jimmy and the door open, and grabbing a bunch of stuff and driving off with it. So what's going on with you project wise? Do you have some stuff that's out there that you'd like to discuss? Some new things you're working on?
The most recent thing I've done, I'm actually going to have to look up the title on, because I don't remember exactly the release title. I did something, Tacticus Games, and I was supposed to be doing something for them regularly. That actually hasn't worked out. But I did an FR-themed mini-adventure for Tacticus. And I guess that's been published almost a year ago now. That's been published. The Red Candle is the title.
Okay.
I have another project for Tacticus in the works that I just keep getting distracted and not finishing it. So I'm not sure what that title is going to be, but it'll be a 5e adventure.
Okay.
On their little, he's got a little line he's running, and it's little short one-shot adventures. So I have one of those in the fire right now. And I'm also getting started with a project through Smirking Dragon Game for a new role-playing game.
Interesting.
But that's too new to talk about. It's going to be released in Europe.
Okay. Will we see a U.S. release?
Only online, probably. And Smirking Dragon may actually have the books available here, assuming that they actually do books. But it'll be like the Embers project they did a few years ago. The Embers was the world of Norse myth, and this one has got a little bit of a horror angle to it, but it's going to be drawn more broadly on your folklore.
Okay.
They've got a world set up that's an undead threatened world is the basic setting for that. But we're just getting started on that. We're busy. We've just figured out how many abilities and stats characters are going to have. Started worrying a little bit on character generation. We're starting a skill system. Very, very tentative at this point.
Okay. So that much at least you can say, whole new system. It's not going to be D20. It's not going to be 5e, just a completely new approach, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Fantasy. It's late medieval technology.
Right on.
On a
So to go back to something you said earlier about short one shot adventures. Do you have a preference from a play standpoint, and then I guess also from a design standpoint, the long multi module campaign or the short one shot, or even the single module campaign versus a shorter one? Do you lean either way as far as playing, DMing, or designing?
No, I guess I don't really. It really depends on what you need and what you want. So I've been running this mini campaign through GaryCon for the past several years, but that's really more of an excuse for me not to have to do a new party every time.
There you go.
But on the other hand, there are people who've been following it, that played all the characters at least once.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said for campaigns and building long storylines and generating all those personal gaming stories. Those almost all come out of campaigns. Think about it. We even call them campaign stories. So I think there's something special about campaigns. But if you don't have the time or the inclination to make that kind of a commitment, there's nothing. Playing a session or two and then moving on to something else.
Sure, absolutely. I have a friend of mine. He's rather fond of GMing the. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, the index card RPG, and that's ideal, literally, for a game that's going to be one night, one session. Very lightweight system, and he's just like, I love RPGs. I just don't have the time week to week to do the bookkeeping for a campaign, so to speak. And I completely understand that approach. I have the free time, so I've got a AD&D campaign that's been going now since 2014. So, that's the beauty of role-playing games. Wouldn't you agree that there's something for everybody out there?
Well, yeah, spin it any way you want.
Yep. We have a question from Awig over on YouTube. Says, "What is? Do you have any favorite TSR settings?"
Not a real big settings guy. Settings are great to steal from. They're great little sources of loot.
Right on.
But I don't know. I've always been fun with the whole concept of horror and even the potential to go into the mist and wind up somewhere else in the setting. I've always found that appealing. I've done the most work on Forgotten Realms. I got to know that reasonably well. Greyhawk, of course, I played in the original Greyhawk campaign.
Of course.
The setting is not really much like the campaign was, but the family resemblance is there.
Sure. Gary's original Greyhawk campaign map was just a map of North America with fantasy places on it, right?
The original one was from an Avalon Hill board game called Outdoor Survival.
Right. That's I remember now. That's mentioned in the OD&D set as a piece of gaming equipment you would need. Pencil, paper, dice, graph paper, and a copy of Outdoor Survival by Avalon Hill.
Yeah, so at a very earlier version, the Outdoor Survival map is dotted with these little ponds or water sources.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of those was supposed to be a castle. And one of them was supposed to be Greyhawk.
Okay.
Before Gary sat down and actually drew out them.
Right on. Very cool.
But yeah, Outdoor Survival was a great little thing that had counters with horses. hikers, and it was a great little starting point if you really wanted to mess around.
Nice.
All kinds of nice tchotchkes, and I don't know if you can still get it. It's been a while since I've seen it.
You can. It is. I guess it's kind of the ultimate irony that it's you can find like a screen grab of it, like a photograph of the page in Avalon Hills magazine, the General, where they slag Dungeons and Dragons as not being a very good game because it doesn't have an ending. You know, this isn't a good war game, and it doesn't end. And you know, Avalon Hill, of course, great, huge war games company, and you know they did the chits and counters for their war games. Well, Hasbro bought Avalon Hill, and of course, Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast, hence Dungeons and Dragons. So, the company that owns Outdoor Survival also owns Dungeons and Dragons. But yes, as far as I know, they were still producing. I say new versions with new rules, but you know, new printings of Outdoor Survival that you can still purchase. So there you go. You can play in an OD&D game. Get your OD&D PDFs from Wizards of the Coast online store, and then get yourself a copy of Outdoor Survival. It can be done.
That's really old school.
Yeah. Cam over on YouTube asked, "Did you do any work on Birthright?"
Very little.
Okay.
Yeah, I was involved in Birthright. I was involved with managing some of the freelancers briefly.
Okay.
So as Birthright expanded, you know, I essentially was given the job of vetting the freelance material and giving it the smell test and writing notes for the editors and things like that. That was the extent of my involvement in Birthright.
Okay. Anything?
Oh, plus Roger Moore's. I forgot to mention. I have to mention Roger Moore's playtest campaign. Played in that.
Oh, very cool.
Roger made that. Yeah, Roger. That may have been one of the first times we really ever did a playtest, more or less. Did regular reports and good little community that was built up around that. So yeah, I had my fingers in that. Got some flour on my hands. Nothing big for Birthright.
Okay, cool. A question I've got, this kind of goes back a little bit more to trivia. I know a great many, as we were talking about this earlier, about Gary naming things after players in the game. Is there anything that's named after you in D&D or AD&D? Or did you name anything after yourself in later versions of D&D?
No, there's a reference to the town of Skipperton somewhere in Indiana, but I think that might have been in one of Gary's novels and not in games.
Well, there you go. Paul Stormberg over on Facebook just says, Rufus! I don't know what that's in reference to. Maybe that means something to you.
Rufus is that's probably my most famous Greyhawk character. Rufus. He appears in Temple of Elemental Evil and
yes, of course, Rufus. Now I know. Yeah, Rufus of Rufus and Burn. Katie wants to know, do you have any other favorite tabletop games to play or run other than Dungeons & Dragons?
Well, see, now Paul can wince because now I get to talk about fighting the skies in Dawn Patrol.
All right, Paul, brace yourself. Some fighting the skies.
Yeah, fighting the skies, currently called Dawn Patrol, definitely a game that I played the heck out of. Run at least one of those sessions at Gary Con every year. Spend a reasonable amount of time at the Dawn Patrol table. Probably my go-to game. currently not in print, but there's been a new edition in process for a number of years. What else? Axis and Allies.
Axis and Allies is a good one. I've got many fond memories of playing Axis and Allies. That's a great tabletop game.
Cosmic Encounter.
Yeah, Cosmic is. I know about it, but I've never gotten a chance to play. Unfortunately, Cosmic Encounter, good game from what I'm.
It's a strategy game with a little bit of the weasel element. It can be quite a bit of fun.
Cool. Paul. Paul has asked twice now, so I guess this must be very important to him. What about Giant Le Mans?
What about Giant Le Mans?
Is that on your list of favorite games? I'm guessing because it came in that context.
Well, Giant Le Mans is actually so. What he's referring to for the uninitiated, this is another Mike Carr game. Mm-hmm. Mike Carr is into airplanes, trains, and fast automobiles. And so years and years and years ago, board game called Le Mans. This predates Formula D by quite some time. Le Mans is a big race in France. Sports cars of all kinds. And it runs for 24 hours. So one day they were sitting around and going, we should do this with Matchbox scale cars and do a full-size thing, and we should do a 24-hour Le Mans game. And I've been involved in a number of them where we literally ran a 24-hour game.
Woo, man.
Pushing cars around the track. You get a team and people would drive in shifts. And Mike also does it. He does a smaller 8-hour version. He's done that. Done it at Gary Con. That's not something, that's not something you care. I think anybody will care to do very often, but every year or two, certainly to do.
Yeah, that's.
The last time I did that, we were Team Ferrari, 3 people in our Ferrari, and
excellent.
Had a strategy since Ferraris at the time were very, very reliable. We decided we were going to try to leverage that. We were going to push the car hard and early and just see if we couldn't count on the car and try to get ahead of the crowd as far as we possibly could before we had to take it easy. That didn't work out. The car broke.
Yeah, it's like my old man said. Some days you get the bear, and someday the bear gets you.
Yep, that's right.
So, obviously with Andromeda Strain hopefully fading out now, what are you doing as far as cons in late 2021 or 2022?
Going to be at Game Hole all 4 days.
Excellent.
And then nothing planned until Gary Con.
Yeah, I hope to get to Gary Con, like physically this year. And I want to say again, I know I said this online, but I want to say again, thank you for your assistance at Gary Con. For those of you who don't know, Skip runs a tight ship over there at Gary Con. So yes, thank you very much. So your Game Hole in October, is that when it is? October?
Yeah, it's the end of October.
Okay.
Or the beginning of November.
Right on.
Yeah, you have to look up. So it usually sits around the last. It's either always usually the last weekend of October, and it often spills over into November. And sometimes it's the first weekend, I guess it.
Right on.
But yeah, a web search on Game Hole Con.
I'm sorry, you broke up there. You'll run something at Game Hole Con, you said?
Well, I am running. I'm running a game every day at Gamehole. I was just going to say that if you do a web search on
Oh, a
Gamehole,
web search. Okay, yeah, that completely crackled out there. So let me
I
see.
usually don't. I usually avoid saying Google. And
Oh
I don't
no,
know. I think
I get you. I'm gonna get this URL here, and I'm gonna put this in the chat so you folks, if this is in your neck of the wood, or you feeling like doing some traveling, check out Gamehole Con. You get to game with Skip Williams. But does anyone have any questions? Just to wrap things up, it's getting a little late in the day, and I'm sure Skip's got stuff to do. I've got a few things I need to take care of. So, any more questions, anyone? This has been a great visit, and it's been fantastic to have you, Skip. And while they're formulating, is there anything you wanted to say that maybe we didn't cover today?
no. I think I'm good.
Okay, great.
I think I managed to run. I think I managed to beat every topic to death pretty thoroughly. So
Well, it was fantastic having you on the live stream, man. I really appreciate it. Sorry about the time mix up. We'll get
that
it
was
right next
me,
time.
brain dead. So it goes.
We'll fix it in post, as they say, and then
There you go.
come back on and we'll have a larf about it and come up with some other good questions to pick your brain.
Alrighty then.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul. Paul's got one question, and I'll let you decide whether or not you want to answer one more question or not. But it's from Paul Stormberg. What is your favorite memory of playing with Gary Gygax?
My let me be literal on this, because my favorite memory of playing with Gary Gygax, he wasn't jamming. There was a game we put together almost on the fly as I the dungeon hop, where I was working one summer, and it was a Friday night or a Saturday night, and it was big. There we had 3 tables set up in one room, and there was people seated all the way around. So there was a GM, and there had to have been 8 players, and nominally including me, but I was actually supposed to be running at the time. And the Mind Flayer had just appeared in the strategic review. And our first level party got down into the dungeon, opened the first door, or came around the first corner, and we came face to face with a Mind Flayer. And Gary and I were sitting at a corner of the table. He was on one leg of the corner. I was on. If we turned our heads, we could look right in. And Gary always had sort of a laid back approach. He always content to let other people take the lead and jump in and fix things or tackle opportunities as they arose. I was only half attached to the game anyway, because I was keeping up till. But so this Mind Flayer shows up, and Gary and I are trying. Well, this is going to be a short game. And then initiative got rolled, and somebody got to go first, and it was our first level character, Wizard, and the Wizard said, "I cast Charm Person." And Gary and I look at each other. It's like, okay, well, we're pretty sure a Mind Flayer isn't a person, but we're just going to keep our mouths shut. And then I had to go deal with hobby shop business, and I came back, and apparently Charm Person had worked. And we're like, okay, we'll take the gift, or maybe it's a mistake, but whatever, we're going to go with it. and Gary and I said, Gary says to me, he says, how do we kill this thing quick? And I said, oh, we're going to have to douse it with oil. It's the best weapon we've got in the party. I mean, we got nothing else. The magic user's already used his one spell.
Yep.
So, just keep him talking and let's get every vial of oil we've got in the party and let's just torch the guy. And then I had to leave again. I probably to either answer the phone, to wait on a customer. And I came back to find the Mind Flayer was running screaming down the corridor, flying. It's a great example of the value of referees run the game.
Indeed. And that is a great tale, man. Thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you, Paul, for the incisive questions over on Facebook and everyone on YouTube, and especially thank you, Skip. I hope you'll come back. I hope we were well behaved enough for you.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess you're just gonna have to treat me like a difficult guest and send me a reminder 12 hours in advance or something.
Yeah, I
sorry for being late. That's all on me.
Oh, that's quite all right. We sat around and BS'd and formulated how best to skin a cat or something like that in the beforehand. So have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. Next week we have Jeff Tolinian will be on the show. Alan Grohe will be stopping by, and AD&D learnings. So we'll have some fun next week. Thank you again, Skip. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and I'll see you all then. Peace. And we are out. Thank you very much, Skip.
Alrighty. It was a good time.
Yeah, have a wonderful